I draw inspiration just from having been alive on this planet. It's a mad world we live in, and a world that is mysterious, undefined, without purpose. And I try to make purpose by making art. I'm not limited, as so many writers are, by autobiographical material. I very rarely use that. I think that anything can be a story, anything that interests me. And so often I'll find something that you might tell me, or I might discover in the newspaper, something that's happened to a friend. Anything can be a story, from any mode. The interesting thing about it is taking a piece of journalistic reportage, for instance, a story in the newspaper, and wondering why, and what happened inside the brains of these people who were doing these things. That often is a motivating factor for a story. I work at home, and I also spend a lot of time in the Sequoia National Forest, where I rent a house. Spent months up there every year, and often I wind up beginning and finishing books up there because there are no distractions. There's no internet, for instance. And yes, all the hassles of real life pile up down below, but day to day I'm not aware of it when I'm up there. And when I'm done with work, instead of running around dealing with all the crap we all have to deal with in our lives, I go out into the woods with a dog and a book. What could be better? That's not for me to say. That's for you to say. I think when I got to the point of that gesture at the end, I felt that that was a perfect place to end, because you can project beyond that. The reader can project beyond that. And it brings you back into the book. What does this gesture mean? Why end here? Each story finds a different ending. I mean, there are books like The Road to Wellville, in which, an historical novel in which you have an epigraph or a coda, which tells you what happened to everybody. In this case, I think that's for the reader to imagine. I'm always asked this, and so I've decided that water music is my favorite because it's my first, and I didn't know if I could write a novel. And it is wild beyond measure, and I don't know if I will ever be quite that wild again. Why don't you play one more song with your band, even though it's 2:30 in the morning? Please. No, I have given up music because other people can maybe be good at more than one thing, but I've devoted my entire life to one thing, and it's taken over in a way that I could never have foreseen. For instance, because I published so many books, and still am, probably 2 months of every year is devoted to being on the road with those books for various publishers. And I do enjoy it, and it's a large part of my life. And yet, you got to cut corners somewhere. And to be a musician, you have to rehearse constantly, and to be a good one. As of the first of this year, I have stepped down from teaching. I don't like to say retired. I prefer the term pre-dead. After 37 years, because I'm living in Santa Barbara, and it's a 2-hour drive in LA traffic to get back and forth. And I established the program, it's going well, and I felt enough already, especially with regard to what we're just talking about, the demands of the various publishers to do things like this. Not for such a wonderful audience as tonight, necessarily. My fans, I love them, but a different audience every night, city to city, country to country, and it is wearing. I have a book coming and a tour in the fall called The Terranauts. It takes place in the early and mid-90s, and it's about the biosphere experiment in Arizona, 91 through 93, in which an artificial environment was created, and 4 men and 4 women volunteered to live inside this enclosed 3.15 acre arena with 3,800 plants and animals, different species, to see if we could create a self-replicating environment beyond the one we live in now. I was telling you that this is all intuitive. I don't know what's going to happen, and it is always very surprising. This was one of the most surprising books of all because I didn't realize at the outset how incredibly sexy it is. 4 men, 4 women locked inside for 2 years. What are they going to do? God. I pick God for sure because I have a lot of questions for him or her.